Lewis Hamilton hit with brutal 10-second penalty for Saudi Grand Prix. This is probably the first time you're hearing about this news, so I urge you to stay until the end before talking about it with your friends, because every detail matters. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. The world of Formula One has just witnessed what can only be described as an absolutely seismic event, a full-blown catastrophe disguised as a regulatory penalty, a moment so shocking, so ludicrous, so drenched in disbelief, that it has instantly become one of the most outrageous storylines in the modern history of the sport. It wasn't a crash, it wasn't a mechanical failure, it wasn't even the unpredictable chaos of a rain-soaked track. No, this was something far more preventable, far more elementary, and therefore far more humiliating. Lewis Hamilton, the titan of Formula One, the seven-time world champion whose legacy spans more than a decade of dominance, the very man who stepped into Ferrari this year to write the final legendary chapter of his career, has just been slammed with a catastrophic 10-second penalty after qualifying in Saudi Arabia. And the reason? His SF24 didn't meet the minimum fuel requirement. But not just by a hair. No. The car finished qualifying nearly 2 entire liters under the threshold. 2 liters. In a sport where milliseconds dictate the fate of legends, where the tiniest wing adjustment can swing a championship, Ferrari, a team with over 70 years of experience, a team with millions invested in precision, telemetry, and strategy, managed to overlook 2 whole liters of fuel. It's not just a mistake. It's a crisis. This isn't a small oversight. This is an error so fundamental, so grotesquely implausible, so wildly off-script, that even the stewards were reportedly stunned when the data came through. Engineers ran the numbers again. And again. And then again. But the verdict was the same each time. Hamilton's SF24 was illegally underfueled. The numbers didn't lie. The tank was short by almost 2 liters, a discrepancy that might as well be a canyon in F1 terms. It's as if a spaceship launched with no oxygen tanks. As if a submarine dove without pressurization. As if a jet fighter went into battle without wings. It's not just inexplicable. It's unforgivable. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. The FIA moved fast. There was no time for diplomacy, no room for negotiation. This was black and white. A brutal, surgical enforcement of the rules. The 10-second penalty wasn't a punishment, it was a public execution. And it dropped like a guillotine. Just hours after what many believed was one of Hamilton's sharpest laps since donning the scarlet red of Ferrari, the news landed like a meteor. Fans weren't just surprised, they were disoriented. It felt like someone had pressed the wrong button in the simulation. That's how unreal it felt. How surreal. Social media immediately caught fire. The explosion wasn't gradual. It was immediate, volcanic, and completely out of control. Twitter became a battleground of conspiracy theories, insults, unfiltered rage, and gallows humor. Instagram turned into a graveyard of shattered hopes. TikTok filled with wild edits of Hamilton looking stunned, cut with dramatic music and slow zooms into the Ferrari logo. Reddit, always a brutal arena, tore into Ferrari's strategy team with surgical precision, comparing them to interns running a spaceship. One top comment simply read, "Ferrari forgot how fuel works." Another, "They actually managed to sabotage Lewis before Sunday." And then the memes, oh the memes, took over. One showed a Ferrari fuel gauge permanently stuck on delusional. Another depicted Charles Leclerc whispering, "It's your turn to suffer now." And inside the paddock, the atmosphere was described by insiders as radioactive. Mercedes engineers were reportedly stunned into silence. Red Bull staff were spotted smirking, then ducking into their motorhome like they just won the lottery. Even McLaren's usually composed team principal was seen wide-eyed, pacing like he just overheard nuclear launch codes. And as for Hamilton himself, witnesses described him as stone-faced, ice-cold, and breathing like a dragon. There are rumors, unconfirmed but spreading like wildfire, that Hamilton stormed into the Ferrari garage and launched into a tirade that shook the very walls. Mechanics reportedly stopped working mid-assembly. PR handlers were seen scrambling. At least 2 senior engineers went missing for over an hour. It's being called the moment the air left the building. This isn't just a hiccup. This is a foundational implosion. This is Ferrari once again caught dancing on the edge of absurdity, and dragging Hamilton into their tragic ballet. And it couldn't have come at a worse time. The The season had just started. This was supposed to be the new era. This was supposed to be the redemption, the revenge tour, the majestic final act of Hamilton's career. The headlines were meant to scream Ferrari rises again. Instead, they now scream Ferrari fumbles again. And the damage isn't just tactical. It's emotional, psychological, symbolic. Because what's most terrifying for Ferrari fans isn't the fact that this mistake happened, it's the creeping realization that it always happens. That Ferrari, despite the legacy, despite the heritage, despite the resources, keeps finding new ways to collapse under their own myth. They don't lose in normal ways. They lose in ways that boggle the mind, defy logic, and rewrite the rulebook on incompetence. And now Hamilton, the man many believed could tame the Scuderia, the man who was brought in as the savior, is finding himself drowning in the same sea of dysfunction that has haunted Leclerc, Vettel, Alonso, and so many others before him. There are whispers that heads might roll. That senior figures in Ferrari's technical department are already on borrowed time. That a major shakeup is being discussed behind closed doors. That certain members of the pit wall might not see the next Grand Prix. And there's even talk, whispered so quietly it's almost inaudible, that Hamilton himself is questioning everything. Not because he wants out. Not yet. But because he didn't sign up for this. He didn't come here to relive the same nightmare that has haunted this team for over a decade. He came for glory. For history. For something clean. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. Now all that's left is a scorched paddock, a penalty that could redefine the championship, and a storm of rage that may not calm down for weeks. Journalists are scrambling to get interviews. Analysts are rewriting their race previews. Fans are already throwing their predictions into the fire. Because what should have been a straightforward Saturday has now become a historic implosion. A nuclear-level embarrassment. A masterclass in chaos. And all of it, every second of madness, every pixel of drama, every ounce of humiliation, comes down to one missing element. Fuel. Or rather, the lack of it. This isn't a storyline. It's an earthquake. The scene was beyond electric. It was nuclear. Not the kind of energy that lights up buildings, but the kind that tears them down. From the outside, the Ferrari garage looked calm, polished, disciplined, a beacon of prestige under the glowing lights of Jeddah's high-speed night. But inside? It was a pressure cooker moments from detonating. And when Lewis Hamilton walked through those doors, the countdown began. This wasn't the walk of a driver returning from a hard-fought quali. This was a march. The walk of a betrayed champion. The kind of walk generals take when they know the battle has been lost not by the enemy, but by their own men. His visor was still down. His suit still zipped. Sweat ran down his arms like rain down the side of a bullet. But his body language screamed one thing: someone was about to get lit up. No PR manager in the world could have spun this. No team principal could have anticipated just how quickly Hamilton's patience would be replaced with sheer righteous fury. He had held his tongue in front of the cameras. Kept it classy in the paddock. But the second he stepped inside the Ferrari command center, it was over. No more diplomacy. No more measured words. This was raw emotion, forged from months of hope, channeled into weeks of preparation, shattered in seconds by a 2-liter fuel miscalculation that would have been unacceptable even in a junior karting championship. The silence when he entered could have dropped a bull elephant. Engineers froze mid-keystroke. Screens flickered with telemetry, but nobody looked at them. The only focus was on the man whose mere presence was setting the air on fire. Vasseur, sitting in front of 6 monitors, didn't even have time to stand. Hamilton was already at the center of the room, towering over the team not with height, but with gravity. His presence pulled everyone into a vortex of pure, unfiltered accountability. "I asked one thing," he said, voice low and thunderous. "One thing." No one dared respond. "I gave up everything for this. Comfort. History. Control. I didn't just leave Mercedes. I sacrificed it. I came here because you said this was the new Ferrari. You said this was the future. The rebuild. The evolution." He took a step forward. "And tonight, I've got journalists asking me how the hell we're so far off pace. How I ended up starting P11 because someone somewhere couldn't calculate a damn fuel margin. 2 liters. 2. That's less than what I drink before a race. That's less than what we spilled during pit practice. That's what you destroyed this weekend for. Not engine failure. Not tire degradation. Not even traffic. Fuel. The room was so quiet you could hear the internal fans of the laptops. One engineer blinked like he was trying to wake up from a dream. Another was visibly trembling. Vasseur finally tried to interject. There was a misalignment between the fuel model. Don't. Hamilton cut him off, ice in his tone. Don't stand there and feed me models. I've raced with outdated models and still made podiums. What I need is execution. What I need is competence. What I need is a team that doesn't treat my legacy like an optional upgrade. His voice didn't raise. It didn't have to. It cracked with purpose, a scalpel slicing through excuses, calculations, and months of overpromising. You know what they told me when I signed? That Ferrari was different now. That we had the talent, the hunger, the structure. That I'd never have to worry about details. Because Ferrari had matured. But now? This feels like 2016 Ferrari in a 2025 skin. He turned to the strategists, not with anger, but with something worse, disappointment. I didn't come here to babysit systems. I didn't come here to debug fuel algorithms. I came to win. You said you were ready for me. But tonight, you made it clear you weren't. Not even close. He looked around one last time. A long haunting stare that swept the room like a final audit. His eyes didn't land on any one person, but on all of them, collectively, as a system, a promise, a dream now breaking apart at the seams. And in that stare was every ounce of history Lewis brought with him. Every lap at Silverstone in the wet. Every overtake in Interlagos. Every title-deciding pass. Every ounce of belief he poured into a machine, into a dream that wore red. What made it worse wasn't just the error. It was the timing. This was supposed to be the comeback. The rebirth. The mission. Every PR piece, every marketing campaign, every backstage documentary teased this season as the culmination of a cosmic shift in Formula One. The greatest driver ever joining the most legendary team ever. It was poetry. And now, just 2 races in, that poetry was turning into farce. A miscalculation fit for a meme, not a team with billion-dollar resources. Meanwhile, the paddock outside was a storm of whispers and second-hand quotes. Team radios had already leaked fragments. He's furious, one engineer reportedly texted a colleague at Alpine. Not yelling. Worse. Controlled. Like he's planning something. In the Red Bull camp, smugness was leaking through every smirk. Max Verstappen's crew knew what they were witnessing, not just a Ferrari failure, but the cracking of the Lewis-Hamilton facade. The Ferrari gamble, the one that could have made Hamilton immortal, was now a liability. Red Bull wouldn't just exploit it. They'd broadcast it. And Mercedes? Somewhere, Toto Wolff was sipping something expensive and expressionless, eyes on the screen, replaying Hamilton's body language frame by frame. He wouldn't say a word. He didn't have to. The world would say it for him. He never should have left. But that's the thing with Hamilton. He's not just a driver. He's a force. A storm waiting to be given direction. If you waste that, if you mismanage that, you're not just fumbling points. You're fumbling destiny. And that's what Ferrari did. They didn't just mess up fuel. They cracked open a void. A chasm that may never be closed again. Because once a driver like Lewis begins to question his faith in the team, the momentum dies. And when momentum dies in Formula One, careers follow. This was not just a blunder. It was the kind of catastrophic inflection point that will be dissected in documentaries, whispered in corridors, and studied by future generations of race engineers and strategists. It will become case study material. Not because of the mistake itself, but because of who it affected when and how deeply. And Hamilton? He may still suit up tomorrow. He may still go out and extract magic from machinery, because that's what he does. But something changed in Jeddah. Something fundamental. And once it changes, it never goes back. It was supposed to be a moment of transcendence. A resurrection. The kind of weekend where you feel the winds of destiny shift, when the energy in the paddock hums with something electric and ancient and unstoppable. Lewis Hamilton wasn't just fast. He wasn't just back. He was glowing. There was something in the air in Jeddah, something that couldn't be explained by sector times or setup changes. Something that felt inevitable. The car was finally underneath him. The harmony was there. The balance. The precision. The fire in his eyes. That final Q3 lap, it wasn't just special, it wasn't just sharp, it was seismic. Like watching a blade being reforged after years in the cold. Each turn, each apex, each split-second decision. It was all done with the casual brutality of someone who wasn't asking permission to return to glory. He was taking it. That lap should have made history. It should have been replayed across every screen, analyzed in every garage, whispered about in dark corridors of team motorhomes. It should have been the moment the narrative shifted, the second people finally admitted what they feared, that even now, even at this stage in his career, Hamilton could still bend the will of the universe around 4 tires and a steering wheel. And then, a flicker. A beep. A red light. A fuel sensor, blinking like a traitor at the worst possible time. In that single instant, everything came undone. The illusion of triumph, the rising arc of the weekend, the smile that had crept back across Hamilton's face. It was obliterated by a mechanical oversight so small it couldn't be seen without a flashlight and a technician's badge. What came next wasn't drama, it was devastation. Not for the car. Not even for the race. But for the story. Because instead of celebrating a top 2 start alongside his bitterest rivals, Hamilton was thrown into the depths. Shoved into the chaos of a grid that eats legends alive. It was a violent, sudden shift, from composer to gladiator, from conductor of symphonies to bare-knuckle brawler in the arena. And this isn't just any midfield. This is 2025's midfield. This is a dragon's den filled with drivers who were born to attack, born to challenge icons, born to steal thunder from the gods. Oscar Piastri, a stone-cold killer with a boyish face and zero hesitation. Fernando Alonso, a vampire of speed who refuses to age, refuses to yield, refuses to accept that time applies to him. Nico Hülkenberg, emboldened by machinery he was never supposed to tame, now taking scalps for breakfast. Lando Norris, Daniel Ricciardo, Zhou Guanyu, Esteban Ocon, Alex Albon. Every single one of them is a storm waiting to be unleashed. And that's not even the scariest part. Because this is Jeddah. Not a circuit where you can wait it out and pick your moment. Not a track that forgives you if your brake balance is a degree off or your front wing dips an inch too low. This is 252 kilometers per hour, through corners that look more like death traps than racetrack geometry. This is neon-lit madness on the edge of disaster. No margin for error. No time for contemplation. A wall at every exit. A wall at every entrance. A wall if you dare breathe in the wrong direction. You don't drive here, you survive here. You don't overtake, you gamble your entire season on a breaking point and hope the other guy blinks first. Now picture Hamilton, a man with the most wins in F1 history, a man with more pole positions than most drivers have points, a man whose name is already etched in the heavens, being forced to fight his way through this hellscape just to have a chance at staying alive in the championship. This isn't just unfair. This isn't just cruel. It's cosmic injustice. It's the racing gods demanding that even the greatest must bleed if he wants to touch glory one more time. And yet, this is also exactly where Hamilton becomes something else. Something uncontainable. Something terrifying. Because if history has taught us anything, and it has taught us a lot, it's that Hamilton with his back against the wall is not a weakened man. He is a man released. When the odds are stacked high, when the walls close in, when everyone else would buckle, Lewis ascends. He doesn't just dig deep. He tears through the Earth's crust and keeps going until he finds fire. He thrives on disrespect. He devours doubt. He uses chaos the way other drivers use traction, as a weapon. And make no mistake, if that version of Hamilton appears on race day, the grid should be terrified. Not worried. Not cautious. Terrified. Because he won't be racing. He'll be hunting. And when Lewis Hamilton hunts, he doesn't just go for clean overtakes. He rips apart your rhythm, your focus, your identity as a driver. He'll take lines you didn't know existed. He'll fake left, dive right, make moves stick that physics textbooks said were impossible. He will break your spirit in Sector 2 and then lap you in Sector 3. And he will do it with silence on the radio and fire in his eyes. Every lap will be a declaration. Every move will be a thunderclap. Every second shaved off the delta will feel like revenge. And the world will watch. The world will feel it. Millions of fans, glued to screens, breathless, watching not just a man drive, but a man defy. Defy the team that failed him. Defy the rules that betrayed him. Defy the clock, the math, the limits of age and endurance. He won't just fight back, he'll rewrite the laws of recovery. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. If he doesn't make it. If the traffic is too thick. If the walls are too close. If one more misstep from Ferrari costs him even a second at the wrong time. If he gets caught behind an Alfa Romeo that forgot what mirrors are. If he spends 5 laps chewing through dirty air while Verstappen and Leclerc run away into the night. If all of this effort ends in a P6 when it should have been a win. Then what? Then we are looking at a moment that may define more than just a race. We are staring at the turning point of the entire championship, maybe even the turning point of Hamilton's entire legacy. Because this season is too tight. The margins are too cruel. The top 5 teams are separated by breaths, by pit stop errors, by yellow flags that come out 5 seconds too late. There is no cushion. No breathing room. No room for this kind of blunder. If Hamilton doesn't get those points, if he doesn't recover in time, then this fuel sensor won't just be a joke in the group chats. It will be a wound that Ferrari might never stop bleeding from. People will remember it forever. They will study it. Fans will rage about it in forums for decades. Engineers will analyze it in their sleep. Podcasters will bring it up in every episode from now until the sun dies. And somewhere deep inside, Lewis will know that it wasn't a rival who beat him. It wasn't Verstappen. It wasn't Leclerc. It wasn't the weather, or the tires, or the strategies. It was a mistake. An avoidable, stupid, tiny, devastating mistake. And yet, he will climb into that cockpit, pull on his gloves, and drive anyway. Because that's what greatness does. Even when the world tries to bury it under protocol and penalty and red lights. It rises. It roars. It refuses to be stopped. Right now, the world isn't just watching, it's trembling. The very soul of Formula One is caught in a supernova of chaos, betrayal, disbelief, and anticipation. Billions of heartbeats are sinking across the planet as the storm surrounding Lewis Hamilton rips through the sport like a hurricane with no name, no mercy, and no warning. What began as a technicality has morphed into something monstrous, an uncontrollable beast of speculation, manipulation, power plays, and whispers louder than thunder behind closed paddock doors. This isn't racing as usual. This is Formula One teetering on the edge of madness. In Monaco, executives are slamming espresso shots in disbelief. In Sao Paulo, children wearing number 44 are asking their parents why their hero has been targeted. In New York, Tokyo, Nairobi, Berlin, and every city where speed is worshipped, the conversation has shifted from lap times and strategy to something much darker. Has someone finally gone too far? The timing isn't suspicious. It's surgical. Just days before the most anticipated season opener in years, Hamilton, the man, the myth, the measuring stick for greatness, finds himself blindsided. Not by failure. Not by misjudgment. But by something that smells like sabotage with a perfume of precision. They say Formula One is brutal, that it chews up the weak and devours the strong. But this feels orchestrated. This feels like a political strike disguised as protocol. There's a certain coldness in how it was delivered. No warning. No mercy. No attempt to disguise the fact that it wasn't just about rules. It was about control. It was about sending a message. But messages have consequences, and the one they just sent to Lewis Hamilton may have been the deadliest mistake they've ever made. Because what they've unleashed isn't a disgruntled driver. What they've unleashed is a phenomenon. A man who has built his legacy not just on talent, but on resistance. Resistance to pressure, to bias, to injustice, to the unseen hands always reaching for the steering wheel of his fate. This isn't just about pole position or championship points. This is about rewriting the rules of engagement, and Hamilton knows it better than anyone. He's not here to race. He's here to set fire to every narrative built to keep him boxed in. Deep inside the Mercedes garage, beneath the polite smiles and corporate statements, there's movement. Rapid, desperate, brilliant movement. Engineers working past exhaustion, telemetry data spinning like a tornado, simulations running 24 hours a day. Every gear, every sensor, every inch of carbon fiber is being optimized not just for performance, but for payback. Toto Wolff, always the chess player, has never looked more focused. There's something in his voice now when he speaks to the team, a sharpness, a hunger, a warning. He knows what's at stake. They all do. This isn't just about winning a race. It's about defending a legacy from those who would tear it down with grins on their faces and knives behind their backs. And Ferrari, oh Ferrari, if they had anything to do with this, even indirectly, even in the shadows, they've made a critical error. Because if they've poked the lion, they've done it in a thunderstorm, in the middle of the night, without realizing that this particular lion doesn't growl. He roars through apexes at 320 kilometers per hour and turns every insult into fuel. There are rumors swirling like tornadoes now. Talk of a quiet war between teams. Unconfirmed chatter about a vetoed FIA document that may have originally protected Hamilton from this kind of disciplinary ambush. Whispers about encrypted radio communications that mysteriously disappeared from public logs. Technical delegates who suddenly requested access to Hamilton's car 2 hours before the initial infraction was even made public. Timing that doesn't align. Evidence that's too convenient. It's not just odd, it's operatic in its boldness. And yet, through all this, Hamilton has said almost nothing. Just a few words. A cryptic post. A single nod during the post-practice media circus. And somehow, that silence is louder than any outburst. Because when Hamilton goes quiet, the world gets loud. And when he finally speaks, not with words, but with what he does behind the wheel, there will be no room left for interpretation. This isn't a comeback arc anymore. It's not a redemption storyline. It's a declaration of war. He doesn't want sympathy. He wants justice, not in courtrooms or stewards' meetings, but on the racetrack, where time can't lie, where raw speed trumps manipulation, where instinct leaves no room for politics. That's where he thrives. That's where the legend doesn't just survive, it dominates. And make no mistake, he's coming for every single one of them. This isn't the old Hamilton. This isn't the polite ambassador. This is the storm-forged version. The sharpened blade forged by years of pressure, insult, doubt, and impossible odds. This is the Hamilton that doesn't see tire degradation, only opportunity. The one who doesn't hear criticism, only ignition. The one who doesn't slow down into corners, he erases them. On Sunday, the world won't be watching a race. It'll be witnessing a rebellion disguised as a performance. The race directors, the team principals, the power brokers, they've all lit the fuse. And now, they have no idea how far the fire will spread. Because when Hamilton drives with rage in his veins and legacy in his heart, there are no rules. Only results. Only records. Only silence left behind him in the deafening echo of greatness. They didn't just target a driver. They accidentally summoned a force of nature. And now, all they can do is watch. There's a pulse right now in the world of Formula One, one that doesn't show up on telemetry, one that doesn't register on GPS tracking or power unit graphs. It's not coming from the tires or the brakes or the wind tunnel data. It's coming from something deeper, older, more primal. It's coming from Lewis Hamilton. And if you're not feeling it, if you're not sensing that tremor in the atmosphere, then you're not paying attention. Because behind the calm exterior, behind the perfectly measured interviews, the handshakes, the sponsor commitments, the smooth PR machine, there's a man reassembling himself in silence. Not in the media. Not in the paddock. In the shadows. Piece by piece. Thought by thought. Layer by layer. The story was supposed to be over. The decline was meant to be linear, clean, polite. The next generation has arrived, they said. Max is the new king. Ferrari is resurgent. McLaren's back. Mercedes? Done. Lewis? Fading. They wrote their headlines, designed their thumbnails, calculated their engagement metrics, and moved on. They all forgot one thing. Lewis Hamilton doesn't do polite exits. He doesn't drift into retirement with a thank you wave. He doesn't fade out like an old song. He's not a memory. He's not a statistic. He's an era, and eras don't end quietly. They explode. They rupture. They scream back into relevance like a tidal wave snapping steel. And right now, deep inside the Mercedes garage, there's a quiet chaos. Engineers speaking in lower tones. Telemetry being reread for the 4th time. Strange smiles exchanged in the motorhome. Something's happening. Not the kind of something that earns a 10th over a lap. Not the kind of something that gets you a few grid spots higher. No. This is a different kind of something. The kind of discovery that makes people afraid to speak too soon. A last-minute change. A recalibration. A shift in the way the car communicates with the track. And it's not just mechanical. It's spiritual. It's like the car itself has decided to believe again. And when Hamilton straps in now, he's not just a driver in a race seat. He's a storm being contained by carbon fiber and titanium. He's not chasing results. He's stalking fate. He's not interested in points. He's interested in vengeance. And when that kind of driver meets even the slightest technical breakthrough, the entire sport trembles. Because what if the man who is already the most dangerous in wet conditions, in tire degradation management, in psychological warfare, in strategic patience, what if that man suddenly has a car that listens to him again? What if every corner becomes a conversation between instinct and machine? What if every braking zone becomes a declaration of intent? What if every DRS zone becomes a sentence in a revenge speech written in rubber and fire? And don't be fooled by the calm expressions on the pit wall. Toto Wolff's silence is not peace, it's pressure. The kind that comes before an avalanche. The kind that builds quietly until it buries everything in its path. And Hamilton? He's already there. Already visualizing the first lap. Already planning who to haunt in the mirrors. Already crafting the race not like a contest, but like a performance, a theater of control, of pressure, of dismantling hope lap after lap until there's nothing left of his rivals but dust and confusion. This isn't just about proving people wrong. That's too small for him now. This is about reminding everyone who forgot. About erasing the convenient amnesia of those who moved on too quickly. It's about legacy not as something to be honored in retrospect, but as something to be enforced in real time. And he's not interested in playing the wise elder role. He's not here to mentor. He's here to dominate. And the other drivers? They know. Even if they won't say it. There's a shift in how they talk when his name comes up. A drop in tone. A twitch in the eye. Because when Hamilton looks at you now, it's not just the look of a 7-time champion. It's the look of a man who's been buried alive by narrative and has clawed his way out with nothing but sheer belief and brutal clarity. That kind of man doesn't lose easily. That kind of man doesn't wait for opportunities. He creates them. Out of nothing. Out of chaos. Out of pressure that would make others crumble. And if Sunday becomes chaotic, if the clouds roll in, if the temperatures drop, if the wind shifts direction, if tire wear becomes a riddle no algorithm can solve, then you better understand something very clearly. Hamilton doesn't just survive chaos. He is chaos. He becomes the variable that strategies can't predict. He becomes the anomaly that computers can't simulate. He becomes the nightmare no strategist accounted for, because no data model can calculate what happens when you try to bury a man who's been reborn in rage, in legacy, in defiance. The stopwatch doesn't measure that. The wind tunnel doesn't simulate that. The commentators can't explain it. But when it happens, everyone will feel it. Every millisecond of silence before lights out will feel like a countdown to a seismic event. Every flash of the camera on his helmet will feel like a warning. Because when that visor comes down, when his breathing slows, when the lights go out, you're not watching a race anymore. You're watching history prepare to retaliate. You're watching the unkillable come back sharper, louder, and more terrifying than before. You're watching Lewis Hamilton stop pretending that he ever needed permission to rise. And the grid? They're not racing him. They're surviving him. For now.